The Outrage, yet another low-budget project that is somehow better than the so-called blockbusters. Here we go again. Another small European studio has gone and done the unthinkable. They've made something original, beautiful, technically impressive, and narratively ambitious, without needing 300 producers, a brand integration team, or a billion-dollar war chest. The Outrage isn't just a good game, it's a damning reminder that quality doesn't have to be approved by a Silicon Valley algorithm or sanitized by 7 layers of corporate filtration before it's allowed to feel something. Built by Polish developer 11-Bit Studios, the same folks behind Frostpunk and This War of Mine, The Outrage is a survival game about a man stranded on a hostile planet, forced to clone alternate versions of himself just to stay alive. It's a game about regret, identity, and part of ourselves that we want to try to bury. But more than that, it's proof that some of the most impactful single-player experiences of 2025 aren't coming from bloated mega publishers. They're coming from smaller, sharper studios that still understand what a game is. So, what's not to love, right? When I first started writing this video, I thought it was going to be straightforward. Just a celebration of a brilliant, emotionally resonant sci-fi survival game built on a fraction of the budget American AAA studios blow on marketing alone. The Outrage was, and still is, an artistic success. But just before I finished scripting, the internet unearthed a twist. The usage of some AI tools when developing the game, which has led to every game journalist working for corporately owned news outlets to burst a nasal vessel or two and completely bury the success of this small yet triumphant release. That's right, much like with Expedition 33, parts of the legacy media machine has gone into overdrive, delivering hit piece after hit piece on this outstanding offering, all under the guise of protecting artistic integrity while conveniently ignoring the fact that The Outrage is more human, heartfelt, and creative than anything the corporations they work for have churned out in years. The same people who championed the likes of Dragon Age the Veilguard and Concord are vilifying a title gamers almost unanimously are enjoying, which raises the question, why? I am Lady Decade. If you like your gaming content spicy, then hit that subscribe button, because this is why The Outrage pisses all over high-budget slop. The past 12 months in gaming have been nothing short of fascinating, not always for the right reasons though. On one side, we've seen high-profile flops like Dragon Age the Veilguard and Concord, games that seemed tailor-made to tick marketing boxes rather than spark joy. But on the other hand, we've had breakout hits that completely stole the spotlight. Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade, Expedition 33, games made with vision, craft, and actual ambition. And the best part, you don't have to pay full whack to play them. You can grab all of these and thousands more quality titles at a steep discount using my affiliate links below. Why pay Ubisoft $70 or $80 for another half-baked mess when you can get something genuinely brilliant for a fraction of the cost? This, of course, includes 34% off The Outrage itself. Happy shopping, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. At its core, The Outrage is a real-time sci-fi survival game about one man, Jan Dalski, marooned on a deadly irradiated planet, and the only way to stay alive is to create alternate versions of himself using a mysterious machine known as the Tree of Life. These clones, or alters, aren't just skill trees in boots. They're fully developed versions of Jan shaped by different life decisions, regrets, and what-ifs. What if Jan had finished university? What if he'd trained as a medic instead of a technician? What if he'd stayed with the person he left behind? In The Outrage, these aren't just backstory hypotheticals or throwaway lore. They're living, breathing versions of Jan, each one shaped by a different life choice. They argue, they disobey, they hold grudges, and more often than not, they're sharper, stronger, or more focused than the man who created them. With an intriguing and original premise, the core mechanic revolves around juggling your limited time, degrading equipment, and increasingly fragile relationships, all while trying not to crack under the pressure of living in a metaphorical and literal fallout bunker with your own failures. Time management is key, and the game makes you feel every passing moment, even if the 1 second equals 1 minute pacing is more stylistic than literal. Where most survival games lean on hunger bars or permadeath, the Outrage builds its tension around emotional weight. It's not just about surviving the elements, it's about surviving yourself. There are no binary moral choices and glowing karma meters. It's just you, 11 different versions of you, and the brutal logistics of trying to keep them functional, cooperative, and mentally intact. In short, it's a kind of mechanically bold, thematically rich, and narratively cohesive experience that AAA studios haven't touched in over a decade. Not because they're incapable, but because it's easier to pretend the market doesn't want this kind of thing than to actually try to make it. Besides, why risk making art when you can sell another battle pass for a neon-coloured character skin? What makes the Outrage so fundamentally different from the usual AAA sludge is that it doesn't treat identity, choice, or consequence like optional garnish. It builds the entire game around them. In most mainstream titles, alternate lives or branching paths are relegated to collectible lore dumps. Here, there's centre stage, complete with memories, grudges, and motivations that often conflict with your own. Instead of chasing empty spectacle or bolting multiplayer onto a single-player skeleton, the Outrage dares to focus on something terrifyingly rare in AAA design: internal conflict. You're not crafting tools, you're confronting your past. You're not grinding XP, you're managing the emotional stability of a crew made entirely of your own regrets. It's introspective, character-driven, and refreshingly devoid of corporate fluff. No live service roadmap, no engagement metrics, no half-baked sequel bait, just a deeply personal sci-fi survival story where the biggest threat isn't the planet outside, it's the versions of you inside. Just imagine pitching that in a modern boardroom at the likes of EA or Ubisoft. It's a survival game, but instead of zombies or aliens, you're haunted by your own bad life choices. You would probably be fired on the spot for thinking outside the box. 11-bit Studios, which made this one, is what happens when a game developer decides to actually respect its audience's intelligence. Based in Warsaw, Poland, this team has quietly built a reputation for making emotionally charged, mechanically inventive games that don't treat players like attention deficit toddlers. And they've done it without a corporate parent, without a merchandising empire, and blessedly without a cinematic universe hanging over their heads. Founded by veterans of the Polish game scene, including former CD Projekt Red developers, 11-bit isn't new to punching above its weight. This is the studio behind This War of Mine, the morally complex survival game so impactful that it was officially added to Poland's high school curriculum. Then came Frostpunk, a bleak city builder that dares to ask what you're willing to sacrifice to keep society functioning. And now, with the Outrage, they've taken that same gameplay-first, theme-forward philosophy and applied it to a sci-fi setting that feels deeply personal and disturbingly plausible. While 11-bit had nearly 300 employees as of 2023, the Outrage was likely built by a small, focused internal team, a lean crew by any standard, especially compared to the bloated credit rolls of modern AAA releases. And while the actual development budget hasn't been made public, it is safe to say that it was a fraction of what AAA studios tend to spend on just their marketing campaigns. We're talking about a game that prioritises concept and execution over spectacle and spend. A title made with purpose, not pre-orders, and certainly not product placement. 11-bit might not be the loudest name in gaming, but they're quietly doing everything right, while the rest of the industry sets itself on fire and calls it innovation. Then came the backlash. Some players found a line in the game's background text. Let me repeat that, background text. Not something you're supposed to particularly focus on. That read suspiciously like a ChatGPT response. It read, "Sure, here's a revised version focusing purely on scientific and astronomical data." Further to this, there was a leftover AI prompt that made it into the Brazilian Portuguese subtitles. Turns out 11-bit Studios had used generative AI for a handful of background elements and some last-minute translation work, representing just 0.3% of the game's text. So, what exactly is the problem with professionals at work literally using tools to shape their creation more efficiently? Well, it's a huge problem according to Legacy Games Media, as they have all been behaving righteously indignant that it wasn't disclosed on Steam. After a few days of pressure and countless hit pieces from all the usual culprits, 11-bit addressed the situation publicly. They released a formal statement explaining the AI usage, promised a hotfix, and started retranslating the affected content using professional linguists. But while the media exploded with think pieces decrying this as a betrayal of artistic integrity, most actual players just shrugged and moved on because literally, who cares? If the game is good, it's good. I'd rather play the Altars than bloody Dustborn and other shovel shit they pretended was good. Despite their greatest efforts to shame the developers and derail the game, the Altars still has a very positive Steam rating. It's sold over 280,000 copies, a brilliant number for an indie title. Meanwhile, outlets like Kotaku, Eurogamer and PC Gamer treated the whole thing like the Jeffrey Epstein incidents. The truth is, AI stories generate traffic, and in an industry where journalism jobs are already being threatened by AI, the outrage came hard and fast. I mean, if they were actually needed and valued by the public in the same way that the public appreciates the likes of, say, Asmongold and other YouTubers, they wouldn't be stressing so much. People like substance and personality in their content. Anyway, despite the journo's greatest efforts to discredit them, 11-bit have been doing just fine. Turns out that no amount of outrage marketing can compete with actual talent. But more and more people have been discovering their fantastic work due to the breakout success of The Altars. One of the most refreshing things about The Altars is how aggressively it refuses to waste your time. In a landscape where open world games have become sprawling museums of filler content and meaningless icons, The Altars dares to focus on something radical: actual urgency. Time is your most precious resource, and the game makes sure that you feel every second of it. While not literally ticking at a 1 second to 1 minute pace, it creates a constant pressure that makes every moment feel scarce and procrastination feel fatal. There's no minimap vomiting icons across the screen, no breadcrumb trails steering you towards side quests you'll forget by dinner, just the cold ticking of the clock, the radioactive sun crawling across the horizon, and a half-broken machine groaning behind you while your latest altar questions your every decision. Instead of bribing you with loot or drip-feeding cosmetics, the game roots its tension in emotional weight. Each altar you create is a branching version of Yan himself, each shaped by a different choice, failure, or moment of self-betrayal. Managing them isn't about min-maxing stats, it's about surviving tense conversations, awkward silences, and the creeping dread that one of you might crack under pressure. The drama doesn't happen in QuickTime event cutscenes, it happens in the quiet, in the work, in the margins where real stories live. And holding all of that together is one single actor, Alex Jordan, who voices every single version of Yan. No stunt casting, no celebrity cameos, just a single performer anchoring the entire emotional range of the game. Interviews suggest he spent weeks in the booth recording hundreds of hours of dialogue to ensure the emotional through line between timelines stayed consistent. And it shows. And crucially, The Altars isn't trying to sell you anything. There's no NFT tie-in, no season pass with the ending tucked behind a quarter-full marketing beat. What you get is a complete, self-contained experience, the kind we used to expect from games back when they launched finished, and this one is a fraction of the price of the latest Assassin's Creed drivel. The game is a great price, plays great, and looks great too. Built in Unreal Engine 5, the game is surprisingly well optimised, running smoothly on most systems without trying to melt your GPU in the process, and crucially it uses its tech to support the story, not smother it in lens flare and tessellation worship. This isn't a game-chasing photorealism or drowning you in particles for the sake of it. The Outrage leans into a grounded, painterly aesthetic, one that makes the world feel cold, hostile and just alien enough without ever tipping into uncanny valley weirdness. From the brutalist machinery of your mobile base to the subtle differences in each altar's posture and expression, the game style serves its themes, not the marketing trailer. And that's the benefit of working with intention. When you don't have 50 producers breathing down your neck, you don't waste time rendering nose hairs or animating cape physics. You make deliberate choices. You focus on cohesion. You cut what doesn't serve the experience. The result is a world that feels handcrafted and not churned out by committee. While some AAA games look like they were directed by 5 different focus groups and a panic attack, the Outrage actually knows what it wants to be, and more importantly, it knows what it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need motion blur so thick that you forget where you are. It doesn't need 3 competing art styles fighting for dominance in every shot. It just needs to look like the story it's telling, and it does. So, did anyone actually notice? Beyond just me uploading a video on the game? Well, yes, and for once they noticed for the right reasons. The Outrage's score currently sits at a solid 84 on Metacritic with a Steam user rating of 89%, or very positive. Not bad for a game with no pre-rendered hype cycle, no E3 stage spectacle, and no billion-dollar publisher dangling it in front of influencers with exclusive hoodie codes. It simply released and people liked it. Based on the critical buzz and community engagement, it's safe to say that the Outrage has carved out a success on its own terms. Not a mega hit, but by indie standards, especially for a game this ambitious and narratively daring, it's made its mark. But more important than numbers is what people are praising. Critics and players alike are recognising the Outrage not just for what it is, but for what it represents. A game that dares to do more with less, more emotional depth, more mechanical focus, more thematic ambition, all delivered without the usual avalanche of staff bloat, marketing fluff or fear-based design. It's not just succeeding, it's making a point, quietly, confidently, and without trying to sell you a deluxe edition with a holographic keychain and a broken promise. What I think is coolest of all about all of this is the fact that the Outrage isn't a fluke. It's more proof of the quiet revolution happening across Europe. A gaming revolution where smaller studios keep delivering smarter, bolder and more emotionally grounded games, while the American AAA machine continues collapsing under the weight of its own spreadsheets. As you know, Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is by far the most prominent example of this, hence why it keeps getting mentioned in practically every video I have made recently. This surreal, painterly RPG developed by a French team that nobody had heard of until it suddenly was the conversation, is continuing to sell steadily. Within just 33 days of release, it had sold 3.3 million copies, a staggering achievement for a first-time studio. Expedition 33 and the Outrage aren't isolated miracles, they're signals. European studios are working leaner, thinking deeper, and taking creative risks that their American counterparts won't touch without 3 rounds of focus testing and a diversity consultant for the monster design. Part of that comes down to culture. There's more public funding in Europe, more creative autonomy and less obsession with franchising, rebooting and IP hoarding. Essentially, artistic expression isn't suppressed in gaming spaces to the same degree that it is in the so-called land of the free, where corporations have an iron grip of coercion and control the people far more than they do in Europe. In Europe, development teams tend to be smaller, more internationally minded, and more importantly, unafraid to say something with real substance. They're creating games with intellect and integrity, games that confront depression, grief, and societal collapse, not just as marketing buzzwords, but as actual design pillars. Meanwhile, American AAA has spent the past decade chasing engagement metrics and polishing everything until it looks good in an Instagram reel. But now that TikTok crowd has already lost interest, surprise surprise there, they've all been left floundering, unsure of what to chase next. It's almost sad, really. All of that money wasted on diversity consultants and marketing teams, and still no one wants to play their games. The most damning thing about the Outrage is that it never once needs to declare what it's standing against. It simply exists, and in doing so, it unintentionally exposes just how lost American AAA has become. You can throw hundreds of millions of dollars at a live service shooter, but if no one on the team knows what the game is supposed to feel like, all you're making is content. Content for a quarterly earnings slide. Content to meet KPIs. Content that says nothing, does nothing, and means nothing. But in contrast, the Outrage doesn't posture, and it doesn't dazzle, and it doesn't beg you to stick around. It just trusts that if it's good, if it's honest, then you'll want to stay. And that's exactly what American AAA seems to have forgotten. So yes, another small European team has successfully embarrassed AAA. Not with a bigger budget, not with glitz, gimmicks, or million-dollar marketing rollouts, but with focus, restraint, and actual ideas. They made something better, with less noise, with more meaning, and somehow with more to say. Again, I might add, this keeps happening. It's not a coincidence, and it's not luck. It's not lightning in a bottle. It's the natural outcome when smaller studios are given creative autonomy, draw from deeper cultural wells, and take risks that don't fit neatly into a metrics dashboard. The Outrage isn't just a good game. It's a reminder that what makes a game matter isn't how many people worked on it, how big the map is, or how many SKUs it launched with. It's intent, care, purpose. It's building something because it needs to exist, not because a shareholder presentation needs another bullet point. So maybe it's time we stopped treating this as an anomaly and started treating games like this as the future. The past 12 months in gaming have been nothing short of fascinating, and the Outrage might just be one of the best examples of why. A smart, emotional, beautifully made game that respects your time and your intelligence. And just to remind you, right now you can grab it for 34% off using my affiliate link below. But if you are still not sold on it, you can also get huge money off Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade, Expedition 33, and thousands of others. Games with vision, games with craft, games that actually wanted to say something. So why pay $80 for another padded out EA checklist when the good stuff's right here for much cheaper? Happy shopping, and I'll see you all again soon.